Hey everyone, my name's Yvonne Villarreal and I'm a reporter here at the Los Angeles Times. And we're kicking off our Emmy contender chats with somebody who's very much worthy, I think. We're joined today by Julie Klausner, who appears on Hulu's Difficult People. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We were talking about basset hounds already.
Yeah, I've got 2 on the show.
There's 2 basset hounds on this show.
Yes.
Who are like the cutest things ever.
I know.
But not the best co-stars.
They're not very well trained.
Tell us the situation.
We write around what they can and can't do. Mostly the latter.
Why did you feel it was important to have
It's
them?
very important to have 2 basset hounds on the show. I don't know exactly why, but like
when you
it
were
was
writing
one of the,
it, you were like,
yes. Yeah, I wrote it. It was in the pilot, and then in the pilot, they're like, we didn't actually have them for the pilot, and I remember going to bed one night because of budget reasons, and I remember going to bed one night crying, they're gonna take my puppies away, but it was fine. Like we got to pick up, and then we reshot like half of the first episode, and we had the dogs by then. But yeah, it's very important for my character to have dogs because I don't have dogs, and I want to play with dogs.
You want to play with dogs.
So I wrote dogs into my show as a means of playing with dogs. But I imagine it's like if you're married and you write in love scenes.
And it was always basset hounds.
Yes, I find the
Why?
breed, there's just something about them that makes me really happy. And they look stupid and they don't know how stupid they look and they are floppy and they step on their own ears and they're not that smart and that makes me laugh.
But we still see them in season 2, right?
Yes, we've cut them into scenes where they wouldn't behave in when we were actually working on the scenes.
And
but,
one bit
yeah.
you were telling me.
One which?
One bit you.
Oh yeah, no, one of them bit me in the first season, but we're just like, oh, let's just give him another try for some reason, and basically rewarded him for biting me.
For biting,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, Mel Gibson has done worse things to co-stars, so. I did have a meatball in my sock at the time, as did,
How does that feel, having a meatball in your sock?
feels like being alive.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Was there sauce on it?
I generally lubricate socks before I put them on my feet anyway, so you call it sauce, I call it lotion. Either way, it was very tempting to the dog, and he decided to bite me. So everything's fine, and he's gonna win an Emmy before I will probably. So good for him. Congratulations, Otis.
I apologize for starting with the dogs. I just wanted to change things up
No,
for you.
never
I'm
apologize.
sure, like,
People end with the dogs
People
usually.
usually end with. I wanted to switch things up.
Okay, good.
Let's talk about sort of the genesis of the show.
Yeah.
I believe part of it was like pulled, or like the kernel of it was from your podcast.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about what prompted you to sort of spin this into something bigger.
Well, the stories are pulled from the podcast, but the actual premise of the show is just my own life. I mean, it's my life, especially while I was doing the podcast a couple of years ago. So the predominant forces in my life, besides my friends, were my boyfriend and my mother. So I kind of pulled from that for my background and figured out ways of dramatizing situations that I had spoken about on my podcast. And the points of the stories were either like, I'm an idiot, or listen to this person acting like an idiot, or the world is so stupid.
Yeah.
So between those 3 themes, I was able to pull from real life in order to come up with stories that would intermix. And I was writing for Billy on the Street at the time, and I asked Billy, would you be up for playing my best friend in some sort of quasi-autobiographical 30-minute scripted comedy? And when a friend asks you, oh, can I write a part for you in my pilot? I mean, what, like, yeah, sure, knock yourself out.
No.
Yeah, exactly. If someone says that, then you need to reconsider whether or not he's your friend.
Right.
But he said yes, and we got to make a pilot, and I will say, tremendous amount of credit that I give Billy, that he is trusting enough of me to write for him as a character named Billy, and it's a tricky representation of who he really is, and the real Billy is different from Billy on the Street Billy and Difficult People Billy, but it is close enough to home that it requires a lot of trust. So I appreciate that, having been used to writing for him on his show, that he gave me carte blanche to sort of create this character that was inspired by him, but not him.
How was that for you to play a version of yourself and knowing when to sort of like push the edge of this isn't really me, but I'm pretending, and when to have more of yourself in it?
I mean, it's the best because you get to do things that you are too afraid to do in real life, and you get to be way more obnoxious, and you get to act like an ass and be funny in that way. And the feminist agenda of it all is the fact that, it's fun to be funny and act like an idiot, and sometimes women get that chance, and sometimes we don't. And in the creation of this show, I really gave myself the opportunity to act out and be a jerk or be stupid, and those are all opportunities that I've wanted to have forever. And I was just sort of lucky enough to have the chance to give them to myself.
And talk about bringing Amy Poehler into the mix as an executive producer. What was that like? Obviously Billy has the connection with Parks and Recreation, and
well, that actually came after I had shown her my script.
Okay.
I had just written this script, which later became the pilot, and I really wanted to make the show. And she was the first person I thought to send it to. I knew she was producing a lot of cool stuff, and I just thought, let's send it to Amy and see what she thinks. And so she liked it, and she was very important in figuring out how to develop it from a script to a series, and came up with the title and sort of helped me figure out what the different worlds would be, Billy's world, my world, themes of the episodes going forward, and just sort of figuring out what the tone of the show would be beyond what I'd already sort of figured out it would be.
Was she for the dogs or not for the dogs?
She is not. She remains on the record as not for the dogs.
Wow.
And I think that, honestly, I will fight tooth, and I have continued to fight for the dogs to just show up, not do what they're supposed to do, and then be very expensive. But maybe, and the only thing I'm open to is possibly replacing them with a different breed and never mentioning it. But even then, I'm going to be very I'll probably make them pay in post for CGI to make them look like Basset
That's
Hounds
only
again.
fair.
Basset Hounds are fun and funny to look at.
Yes. They're so cute
I
and
enjoy them,
sweet.
but they don't behave very well on the
Well,
show.
and the
in
show,
general.
it very much feels like a New York show.
Yeah,
Talk about that being important for you and what you wanted to sort of get across with that.
Well, I take pride in the fact that it's a New York show, but it's not Louis' New York or Broad City's New York. It's sort of our own version of the sort of harrowing experience of living in Manhattan, especially as, aspiring performers and writers trying to get anything they can in the world of show business. It's certainly something that I have a lot of experience with. And I will say, as a writer, the better things are that I've written that I can see are better usually come from real life experience. And so I have written other things that are based in other locations and the suburbs or California or Europe or anywhere, summer camp, but there's something about the direct connection of writing a show that takes place in an apartment that's a lot like mine, with a mother that's sort of similar to mine, and a boyfriend at the time.
Is so good.
Andrea Martin is just
so good.
She kind of blows my mind.
I want her to be my mom.
Well, I think she's available. She doesn't have a daughter; she only has sons, so she's very open to that.
All right.
But because I'm so connected to it, I am also able to sort of pull from the emotional realities that fuel these rather absurd situations, because I've experienced them all firsthand, and there is a sadness, there is a desperation, there is a vulnerability to these characters really needing to be liked and not getting what they need, and so I'm able to draw from that just from my own personal experience, and I'm very much a New Yorker. I'm what Grammy calls a real New York Jew.
Well, how would you describe the Julie character in Difficult People for those who haven't seen it, and how she maybe differs slightly from you? And
arrogant, stubborn, hot-headed. How is she different from me? She has a poor sense of judgment. She has a poor sense of awareness of her surroundings, or she cares less about her surroundings than I do in real life. I am more measured, I'm more self-aware, I'm more self-deprecating than she is. I think she has more confidence than me, and if something doesn't go well, or if a joke that she may try out doesn't land well, she's way more likely to blame the audience than to look inward and say, maybe what did I mean by that, and why did I, and then she's also, she has bigger balls. She's way more willing to put herself out there in a very loud, confident place. And I clearly need to write a character for myself in order to do that. So,
Well, and speaking of how bold and, just what you can do with this show is in the pilot episode, we get that tweet joke that everyone has sort of responded to. Talk a little bit about, like, were you worried about how that would land, and talk about how people responded to it.
I mean, it was my character's tweet, and she's not the most she doesn't have the best social skills, so it would never have occurred to her to, like, think about that before sending it out. That's not me. That people kind of can't tell the difference is sort of something that I sort of think to myself, like, well, you know what? We're not a show for everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable with not being universally liked. I'm just happy that I'm liked at all, honestly. It's always like a nice surprise when I wake up and there are people that, are into my stuff, so.
Well, and yeah, you're very blunt on Twitter. Like, do you find that because now you're associated with the show that you have to be more measured in this type of stuff, or like the things you say about certain people, because you don't want it to hinder what people think of the show? Or
I don't think anybody would know who I was if I weren't authentic, and that I wasn't a loudmouth, and that I wasn't a little negative or mean sometimes. I think that part of the opportunity that I have to make this show comes from the fact that I am my authentic, cranky self.
Right.
And there are things that I work out in comedy, and I have the opportunity to, and I'm really lucky about that. But it is a little weird to think that there are more people hearing me than there used to be. But there are worse problems to have.
Right. Well, we're going to take a question from Twitter.
Great.
Or I think it's Twitter. Maybe it's Facebook.
Could be anything.
Anything.
It could be
somewhere in social media land.
From a talking bird.
A talking bird. It comes from Travis Moser, who says, will we see a world's oldest living goth inspired situation on season 2?
I know what he's talking about. And I don't know. Maybe. There's always room for experiences that I've spoken about on my podcast to be beautifully translated through a series of veils and legally acceptable tricks to depict the person I'm talking about, and make into a situation. But the odds are, if something really made me angry, I'll figure out a way to put it on the show, because part of making something that made you angry funny is an important way that I deal with stuff just for my mental health. So yeah, probably.
How did you approach season 2? Was it any different from season 1? Did you have more time, less time?
We had more time because we couldn't have possibly had less time. We wrote season 1 in like 6 weeks. Wrote 8 episodes in 6 weeks. Yeah. It was absolutely
insane. Did you ever leave your apartment?
To go into the office, yeah. But thank God I have the world's best showrunner, and my co-writer Scott King is with me every step of the way. And so once we got through what was essentially like a boot camp kind of experience for season 1, we were able to build in a little bit of more, a lot more time when you think about it, to have like a blue sky period where we were like, I'd like to see this, or I'd like to see that. And then, now that we know that we have this, not necessarily a formula, but we like stories to connect. We like when the characters either get in our own way or the world intervenes to get in our way for us. So going into it, we also figured out that, Julie needs a drive, Billy needs a drive, try to incorporate stuff from their world in both ways. Those are things that you have to figure out once you do them. You can't start with a pattern. You have to kind of acknowledge patterns as you go, and then try them out, see if they work, try something else. So it gave us more of an opportunity to experiment with that, because not only were we writing the first season in such a short amount of time, but we were also figuring what the show was. Right. And I think in some ways we still are, and that we know what works, but I think we're still trying out things that we don't know don't work. But as far as how it goes, Scott and I break the story for every show in the room together, and we have sort of rotating writers, guest stars who kind of come in and pitch, and then I will we get a very detailed outline together with jokes included, and then I will usually go off and write the first draft, and then between me and Scott, we will just kind of rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it until we get to production, and even on set, we'll just keep tweaking it until it's what we need it to be. But it's very little improv.
And the second season premieres in July.
July 12th, yeah.
July 12th.
Yeah.
Have you wrapped all production? And then,
Yes.
And then, so is that nice to be able to write, like, say you're on episode 6 or whatever,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
say, maybe what we did in this episode prior doesn't work. Should we go back? Like, did you go back a lot on?
Well, we shot all of our episodes at once. We cross-shoot because we have one director, Jeffrey Walker, shoots all of them. So that's a little overwhelming and chaotic as well. But we do learn constantly whether it's from the right, because we did write them chronologically. So if, 204 had a lot of problems and a lot of rewrites, and we try to take what we learned from that to bring it to the next one. But even now as we're editing, we're like, oh, I wish we'd had, the opportunity to, shoot something where Billy where we had like a more visual representation of his story, or just things that, are hindsight, and you have to kind of like, if you're Game of Thrones, I imagine you go back and reshoot them and you stack the tripods on like, piles of actual money, but we don't have that. We don't have that opportunity, unfortunately. We're still a little scrappy.
How's the guest star list? Because
it's insane.
No guest star have I ever identified with more than Rachel Dratch, waiting for someone to wait on her in that restaurant.
Yeah, who has worse problems than the people who are complaining.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel comes back. You'll be happy
great.
to know.
Great.
And as does Christina Gaussis, who plays the casting director in the Devil's Three-Way episode. But our guest stars are insane, and I mentioned they're insane because no other show has any like guest star roster even close to ours. The diversity and the randomness is pretty remarkable. This season we have Nathan Lane, Joel McHale, Method Man, Debbie Harry, Amy Sedaris. Tina Fey is going to be on the show. John Mulaney is playing a character. Kate Pearson is playing herself from the B-52s. Like, there's a pretty amazing list of guest stars that we could never have dreamed of.
That's
to be
awesome.
so lucky to have. Yeah, and to have the pop culture sort of wherewithal to be so enthusiastic about being able to curate people from all walks of life that fit into our character's specific world is just the best thing ever.
Well, I want you to work into season 3. We were talking about Real Housewives of New York before you guys joined us.
By the way, Luann de Lesseps and Sonia Morgan and Luann de Lesseps are in an episode together.
That's like the holy grail. But I was going to say, I want season 3 to have you on that Real Housewives of New York bus tour. You have to do that.
Maybe. That might be a good job for Julie Kessler to be a tour guide on that thing.
I won't ask for credit on that.
Well, legally, we have to ask the union, but no, we'll definitely we'll figure something out.
We're going to take another question.
Great.
This one's from Facebook. It's from Randy Schreiner, who asked, how is it playing Tammy's mom in Bob's Burgers?
It was really fun. My best friend Holly won an Emmy for that episode, and I got to improvise with John Benjamin, which is so fun, and I basically just used my regular voice to play like a Yenta 3 times my age, and it was the best. I love that show. Mm-hmm. I remember being like, I was sick with the flu once, and I watched like all of them in a row, and it was the most like healing experience I've had in quite a long time.
I hear a lot of people say, like, it's surprising to me how many people come up and want to talk to me about Bob's Burgers.
Really?
Yeah. It's like not something I thought would happen.
It's a good antidepressant, and and I liked that episode a lot. It was very well written, and the connections were really satisfying. But no, that was super
Been fun.
Yeah.
We have Courtney Soliday on Twitter who asked, do a lot of people peep the show because they know difficult people, then realize they are one?
Now, did she say peep the show?
Yes.
Is that a young person turn of phrase?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
I think
word up,
Courtney might be a millennial, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Shall I Snapchat my answer in return? Shall we vape together, Courtney? So what's the question again? It says.
Do you think? I guess she means. Do you think more people watch the show?
Yeah.
Because
they know difficult people in their lives
versus
Definitely.
whether they are one?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was like Polar's genius of like I said, she came out with a title, and I didn't know what to call it. I just thought it would be like, oh, this is what my life is like, and or the best friends element of it.
They say things that you say to a friend when you don't think people are listening.
Yeah, very much so. And I'm always like the best compliments are like, that's me and my friend, or that's me and my mom, which I get a lot. But I think that's definitely the case. And I think also just from a cultural critic point of view, I think we're in a place where there's a lot of sunshine, and people are very positive, and people are critical of people who are not very positive. Yeah. So I think that our show does the service of providing catharsis to people who are cranky and negative or really annoyed or pissed off by the world around them. I think that is a very important emotion to express. I think it's a very important part of being funny. So I'm really happy to be one of the crankier comedies, and I do think that, you know, the title is universal enough that people could be like, I've got a lot of difficult people in my life.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's a double meaning because we're difficult and the world around us is as well. And that's just the way things are in real life too.
How was it working with Hulu? Have you been to the offices? I know Aaron.
Yes, they've got great snacks.
Aaron Paul was like, they have beer on tap. That's like all I need.
I think that's just for Aaron. I think that's just for Aaron.
But what is it like working with them?
They're the best. They're great. It's the best possible scenario because they are new to the game of original programming, and they are eager to try things out that they haven't already tried out and know to not have worked in the way that people kind of like deduce things from things that have happened and perhaps are singular examples, but they look back and group them and they say, well, those don't work. And Hulu doesn't have that cynicism, and on top of it, they are also excited to try something new. Ours is a new series. I was excited to try something new. And the other thing is that Hulu they're TV fans, which is very cool. Like, they are genuinely people that love television and what makes television great, and that's also kind of great to come from a place where you have that sort of, I don't know, that background of, I grew up, you know, not having a TV limit, and I can't say that it's helped me in every way, but I get the feeling that Hulu are, you know, they're fans like we are, and also just, you know, from my personal experience, they've just been so supportive and so enthusiastic and daring in terms of being able to try things that you wouldn't know if they were up for or not. Their notes have never been, they haven't really restricted us. If anything, some of their notes have improved the stuff that we've wanted to do, and then they've never said like, no, you can't do that either. So it's just a best of all possible scenarios.
Well, and they have conference rooms that are called like Central Perk.
Yeah.
It's like awesome.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. No, I'm fine with that too.
Well, Julie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You guys, season 2 of Difficult People obviously premieres July 12th. And we want to thank you for joining us for our Emmy Contender Chat. We'll be back with some more this season. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's good water.